Okay, let's unpack this. If you have ever been through middle school, or maybe you know someone who is right now, you know that feeling, the social minefield. And you almost certainly know Greg Heffley.
Oh, yeah.
So today we're diving deep into this, well, this absolute giant, the globally recognized phenomenon that is Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney.
It really is one of the biggest children's franchises ever. And we're pulling together a whole lot of sources today. The full book list, summaries, character details, and some thoughts on why it's structured the way it is.
Exactly. Our mission, basically, is to give you the quick version. Why does this series connect with literally millions of kids? How huge has this whole Wimpy Kid world become? And maybe the most interesting part, what do its kind of surprising origins tell us about making a story really land?
Well, what jumps out straight away from all the reading is that unique hook. You've got Greg Heffley, this, constantly scheming middle schooler, bit of a wisecracker.
Definitely.
And his best friend, Rowley Jefferson, who's just so earnest. And they're just trying to figure out, adolescence.
And the genius, which all the sources point to, is that format. It's not your standard novel, right?
Yeah.
The books look like these funny diary entries with all those hand-drawn pictures, which isn't just for laughs, it actually serves a really important function.
It does. It makes them like the go-to series for what they call reluctant readers. Big blocks of text can seem daunting, but this journal style breaks everything up. Feels less like homework.
Yeah.
And more like you're peeking into someone's top secret, hilarious diary. You feel like you're in on it with Greg.
That's it, exactly. You're in on it, a co-conspirator. Okay, but let's talk about just how big this conspiracy is, because this wasn't just a lucky break. It's like an institution now built on turning up year after year.
The scale is pretty mind-blowing. The main series kicked off way back in 2007, and it's just kept going. We're looking at, 19 main books published already?
19.
And book number 20, called Party Pooper, is actually scheduled for October 2025.
Wow, book 20. That's a serious milestone. And we see the books are recommended for age 7 plus key, but honestly, they appeal way beyond that. They even picked up things like the Blue Peter Book Award back in 2012.
Right.
But what's really interesting is the strategy. Why does releasing one basically every year work so well?
Well, it creates this rhythm, doesn't it? A constant way back in for readers. Publishers get this reliable chance to reach a huge audience that's waiting for the next one.
Yeah.
And for Jeff Kinney, it lets him structure each book around things kids recognize, summer break, back to school, the disastrous family holiday. That regular release schedule just fuels the whole thing.
It makes sense. That structure is key. But here's where it gets really interesting, connecting that scale back to the guy who started it all, Jeff Kinney. He's not just an author, he's a cartoonist, screenwriter.
Right.
And this whole thing didn't actually start out aiming for the bestseller list for kids.
No, that's the first kind of twist in the origin story we found.
Yeah.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid actually started online on funbrain.com back in May 2004.
Online first.
Yeah, it ran as a serial online and apparently got something like 20 million views before it ever hit bookstores as a physical book in 2007.
20 million views. That's incredible validation before you even print page 1. The publisher must have known they were onto something.
You'd think so.
But even with that, the second twist, according to the sources, is that when Kinney first pitched it, this was at the New York Comic Con in 2006, he actually saw it as a book for adults. Like a nostalgic look back at being a kid.
Yeah, imagine that. And the publisher's deciding to aim it at kids instead. Well, clearly that was the right call. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What was it about it that felt adult to him?
Maybe that cynical edge Greg has, that sort of dry humor about how awful middle school can be.
Could be. It's definitely sharp enough that adults get the jokes, even if kids are the main audience. It's got that slightly knowing wink.
It absolutely keeps that cynical core. And you have to give Kinney credit, too, for, his wider work with kids. He created Pop Tropica, that website.
Oh, yeah, Pop Tropica.
And he owns a real bookstore in Massachusetts called An Unlikely Story, which is just a great name. He seems really invested in getting kids reading.
That whole approach, being part of that world, probably helps explain why the books connect so well.
Okay, so let's go back to the start then. Book 1, setting up Greg's world. The setting is deliberately kind of vague, right? Just some American suburb, could be anywhere.
Makes it relatable globally.
Yeah. And Greg, he's in 6th grade, and right away he's dealing with, bigger kids, the whole social ladder thing.
And his main drive, we know, is fame. He's obsessed with being popular, always dreaming about being rich and famous later on. There's that great quote early on.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be famous one day, but for now I'm stuck in middle school with a bunch of morons.
stuck with a bunch of morons.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up his attitude. And that dream clashes so hard with his actual life, especially with his brothers. The family stuff is just central to the comedy and Greg's misery.
It's the perfect middle child setup, isn't it?
Hmm.
You've got Roderick, the older teenage brother. He's in a terrible band. He's mean to Greg. But Greg almost sees him as some kind of, I don't know, twisted role model.
He does. I love that bit of wisdom Greg supposedly learns from him. What is it? The quote?
Yeah, Greg says, if there's one thing I learned from Roderick, it's to set people's expectations real low, so you end up surprising them by practically doing nothing at all.
Exactly. That is just peak slacker philosophy.
It really is. That kind of dark, almost adult humor King maybe originally intended. The fact a kid is thinking like this.
Right. But then he's also got Manny, the little brother. Manny's the totally spoiled toddler who gets away with everything. Parents love him. He never gets blamed. He's basically like the symbol of unfairness in Greg's universe.
So true. And beyond the family, Book 1 really lays the groundwork for why the series lasts. It hits all those core themes.
Yeah.
The awkwardness of adolescence, trying to figure out who you are, the social pecking order, and how complicated friendships can be versus wanting to be popular.
And the absolute classic example of all that in the first book has to be the cheese touch. It's legendary.
It really is iconic. The cheese touch just taps into that primal fear of being contaminated, socially ostracized, that playground dread. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like this permanent version of cooties attached to this moldy piece of cheese on the basketball court.
Just thinking about it makes me shudder slightly.
Right. It turns the whole schoolyard into this anxiety zone.
And what's interesting is how that whole situation really puts Greg and Rowley's friendship to the test. Greg is, willing to lie and scheme to avoid it and protect his status.
While Rowley's just Rowley. He's not bothered about status at all.
Right.
Which brings us back to that central dynamic we touched on earlier.
Yeah, talk about that a bit more.
Well, the sort of underlying commentary in the book seems to be that Greg, our narrator, the one desperate to be popular, he keeps failing. He's always scheming, looking for an angle.
Right.
But Rowley, who's completely innocent, maybe a bit naive, just wants to have fun.
Yeah.
He often ends up accidentally popular or just happier.
Huh. So the unintentional lesson for kids might be that all the plotting doesn't actually work, but just being genuinely enthusiastic might. That's quite a subtle message running through, 20 books now?
It creates that narrative tension. Greg failing all the time lets the reader laugh at what happens when you try too hard to fit in, which is actually a pretty useful thing for kids dealing with their own social stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the proof that the format and themes work is just how long it's lasted. Looking at the timeline, it's like a yearly event.
It really is. The sources just track that consistency.
Yeah.
You get Roderick Rules in 2008, making the older brother a key part of the brand. Then Dog Days in 2009, doing the whole worst summer ever thing.
Oh, I remember that one.
Right. Then you jump ahead, The Long Haul in 2014. That's the disastrous family road trip. And the latest one, Hot Mess, just came out in 2024. Each book grabs onto one of those universal kid experiences.
And sticking around that long let Kinney broaden things out beyond just Greg's perspective, right? That's where the Rowley books come in, the whole awesome friendly universe.
Yeah, they're more than just simple spin-offs, I think. They give you that essential other viewpoint. Rowley's diaries are way more positive, less cynical than Greg's.
Bit of sunshine.
Exactly. It kicked off with a World Book Day title in 2019, Diary of Greg Heffley's Best Friend, and that led straight into Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid, Rowley Jefferson's journal.
And Rowley's world seems a bit more playful, showing the format can do different things.
Totally. In 2020, you got Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure, which is like a full-on fantasy story written by Rowley, and then Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Spooky Stories in 2021.
So he's branching out into different genres within the Wimpy Kid style?
It shows how rich that world Kinney built really is. And Rowley's success validates a totally different kind of kid, one who's okay just being himself. It gives kids another way in, maybe if they don't quite connect with Greg's angst.
And of course, something this big gets adapted. Movies, animation. But Kinney stayed involved, right?
Yeah, that seems key. It became a live-action movie back in 2010, and then more recently, it got an animated version on Disney Plus, starting in 2021.
In Kinney's role.
Crucially, he didn't just sell off the rights and walk away. He was an executive producer on the films, and, well, obviously he illustrates all his own books.
Right.
That control means the voice, the look, the humor, it all stays consistent.
Yeah.
That's vital for the brand.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the takeaway seems to be this kind of double act. You've got the unique diary format with the drawings that pulls in kids, especially reluctant readers.
Hmm.
But it works because it's grounded in this really honest, funny, sometimes a bit dark look at middle school life, the social games, the family stress, and the fact it's heading for book 20 just proves those themes, wanting to fit in, dealing with your family, and they just don't get old. They connect everywhere.
Which leads to maybe one last thought to leave you with, something that comes out of looking at all this material.
Mhm.
The series works because we laugh at Greg's desperate attempts to be cool, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So think about that core dynamic. Greg scheming for popularity versus Rowley, who finds it without even trying, just by being himself awesome and friendly. What does it actually tell us that the wimpy kid kind of stays wimpy because he never learns that lesson from his supposedly clueless best friend? And what does that teach kids reading it about who they are and maybe what really leads to acceptance?